All right. Thank you all for your patience as we get all of this technology up and running. We're so glad to have you all joining us. Those of you that are joining us from Zoom today and those of you that are on Facebook Live, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. My name is Stephanie McLaughlin. I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist for the Partners Resource Network. And Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers. We are funded through the Department of Education, Office of Special Education. So our PTI projects here in Texas are PATH, PEN, and TEAM. We serve to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special health care needs. So again, we're so glad to have you here today. And joining us, helping us with all those technical issues is our Director of Statewide Services, Christina Henning. So we're so happy to have you on, Christina. And I want to get to our guest speaker quickly. If you have a question, we're going to have some time for questions at the end. If you are on Zoom, you can put those questions in the Q&A box and we'll answer those at the end. And if you're on Facebook, go ahead and leave a comment and we'll be looking for questions in those platforms as well, so we can answer questions towards the end. But we want to get you over to our guest speaker today to share that information. So welcome. Our speaker today is Kia Salah. He is a licensed specialist in school psychology for Region 10. He's worked his entire career in special education as an LSSP, district coordinator, and evaluation supervisor. His areas of expertise include evaluation, behavior management, and mental health. So welcome, Kia. We're so glad to have you here today, and I'm going to let you take it over.
Okay. Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you, Christina, as well, for contacting me and setting this up. All right, so to everyone out there on Facebook and Zoom land, thank you for joining us. And so for this session today, as discussed, we're going to talk a little bit about addressing social and mental health, just some of the challenges that are going on in our current circumstances. So, as I said, I'm a school psychology consultant through the Region 10 Educational Service Center in the North Dallas area. And so I do all of my work with supporting staff who work with special education populations, but a lot of my passion of my work lies in working on areas of mental and behavioral health, and just making sure that in a time, particularly in a time like this, in a time of great challenge and crisis and surprise, that we're not forgetting about those pieces, and then what are some things we're going to do to address that. So for today's session, I'm really just going to dig into a couple of strategies, a couple of big reminders of things, particularly for parents. If you are now an impromptu homeschool teacher, I know I'm kind of in that same boat. I have a daughter who's 3.5 who goes, to daycare most days, as my wife and I work outside the home, and now we are working from home and also teaching from home and parenting from home, and so that can become very challenging and overwhelming very quickly. And so I'm going to give you guys a couple of ideas and a couple of things just to think about and keep in mind, and hopefully capture that can be helpful to you. And we're actually going to start by trying out one of those pieces. We're going to practice here as a group. So if you'll just work with me, I'm going to show you and walk you through a strategy, and we're going to do it here at the start of this meeting just to make sure we're all in the right place and with our mind and resetting things. And so what you're seeing here on the screen is, you should see an example. We're going to talk about, I've seen it called box breathing or the 4x4 breathing, but we're going to do a quick breathing exercise. How we're going to do that is, I want you, when we start, if you'll see the image, it says start here. We're going to start by breathing in for 4 seconds. We're going to breathe in, you're going to count 4 in our heads, and then you're going to wait 4 seconds. You're going to hold that breath for 4 seconds. Then we're going to breathe out for 4 seconds, and then we're going to hold in place again for 4 seconds. So again, a 4 count the whole way, 4 seconds as we breathe in. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to breathe out, and we're going to spend 4 seconds doing that breathe out. And then we're going to just hold, or you can count to 4 for 4 seconds. So really quickly, here we go. We're going to practice. On your mark, get set, go. So we breathe in, hold, breathe out, and hold. Okay. So hopefully everyone's feeling a little bit better. Kind of just a quick reset. So this is a specific breathing technique. There are lots of examples out there of different breathing techniques that you can see and that I'm sure you can find posted on social media or that you look into. I'm a big fan of box breathing or 4x4 breathing. I've always heard it called box breathing typically because it's really simple, it's really straightforward, really easy to do, and it gives you a nice little refresh. You get to reset your shoulders and your body and your lungs and how you're holding your weight, and it's just a really uh, quick and easy way to do that. And so this is a great strategy for yourself, for parents, for teachers, for people that are stuck in back to back to back to back Zoom meetings, to just make sure and every now and again we're checking in with ourselves and doing some kind of breathing. And I think breathing is really important because we know that there are more effective ways to breathe to help you keep your body in alignment and for your benefit. But we never practice breathing because we all know how to do it. It's something that happens automatically. And so I think being really conscious of, if you find yourself hunching over your desk more, or finding yourself feeling more stressed, if you find yourself snapping or getting frustrated with your children or your significant other or whoever else you happen to be shelter in place with, um, remembering to take some time and stop, and spare half a minute to practice some of our breathing. So this box breathing strategy is one that is really valuable. This is actually one that they teach in the special forces, in the military, and in all sorts of other situations. So box breathing, this 4x4x4x4 breathing, is a great strategy just to reset ourselves. And so it is great, we can practice and teach that with our kids. I do it with my daughter. Whenever, she's getting overwhelmed, and we will pause and we will breathe and we'll do breathing exercises. And it's a really good way to help us regulate our emotions. But it's also good for adults. And I think it's really important for us in this time, for one of the key strategies for us to be that we have to find ways to still try and take care of and manage ourselves, and manage our emotions. Because one of the things we definitely know in our field, in our work, is that a dysregulated adult cannot help a child regulate themselves. So if we ourselves are not doing the work to take care of ourselves, to try and manage our emotions, to practice these things, we are going to have an impossible time with supporting our children in that. And so it's important that we create opportunities, that we take the time when we can to breathe, to take care of ourselves, to eat, to drink water, to ignore some of the distractions as much as we can, and also to give ourselves kind of some compassion in that. Being here, in our home with my wife and with my daughter and our dog, we have all snapped at each other. We have all lost our temper at each other at some point here. And so it's important that we're able to step back and take care of that, particularly for adults. If you have, your kids there and you're trying to take care of them, one of the best tips that we would start out with is say, make sure you're breathing, you're drinking water, you're eating, and just addressing those things for yourself as well. Because we have to take care of ourselves if we're going to be able to take care of and help others. So one of the first things that we have to do there is make sure we take care of ourselves. And so that breathing strategy, I know we don't always have a lot of time, but breathing strategies are really quick and really easy, and we can knock them out pretty fast. And they're an easy way to help us reset and help manage our emotions in these situations. Okay. So one of the things I really want to talk about is, I don't know what everyone's situation is. I don't know what, everyone's dealing with, in their situation of working from home, or if, there's, questions of employment or instability, what, if you have kids who are 3 or 13 or 23 in your house, if, all these other pieces. So one thing I would keep in mind in this process is, I think one of the great ways to think about what we need to do is going to be captured in this image here of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so Abraham Maslow is a famous psychologist, and he's mostly famous for this hierarchy of needs. You hear about this a lot, and we see it a lot. But one of the things that's really important about Maslow is he's really the pioneer of positive psychology. He is the kind of the founding father of this practice, where he said that we need to be looking at helping people grow. And the practice of psychology needs to be about helping people realize their potential, about growing and achieving and being prosperous and successful and thriving, instead of what he called using a bag of symptoms and diagnoses. And so he really wanted to get away from this deficit model. And one of the ways he did that was to kind of outline this process of what our needs are as human beings in order to grow and reach our potential and to achieve and thrive. And so I think just thinking of this hierarchy, this process, can be really helpful in thinking about what do I need to do right now in order to support myself and to support those in my care. And so obviously the very bottom rung there is physiological needs. We all need food, we all need water, we all need shelter, we all need rest. We need physical things taken care of for ourselves as a basic need. Obviously we need to eat and have water. And so if that is where you're at, if that is where your focus needs to be, then that is where your focus needs to be. But that is our first rung. I do a lot of professional development at our service center, where I provide people trainings for half day and all day. And I will tell you, when I look back at the feedback that I get about my day of training, the two things that I hear the most about are people wanting snacks and trainings, and people wanting me to change the temperature in the room for our trainings, because someone's always too hot and someone's always too cold. And it seems silly when I'm trying, looking at that, but I know those are the basics. If we're dehydrated, if we're hungry, if we're too cold or too hot, if we're sleep deprived, we cannot address other things. And so just know that those are kind of the big needs that need to be covered first. And I think this is really important, particularly with some of our teenagers and teenage age students. Typically, those kids need a lot of sleep, and they don't get it because your school may start at 7:30 or 8, or they're part of band or football and they need to get there early. And so one thing I would say is this is a great time to make sure we're taking care of those basic needs. And so if your child sleeps in, and we're supposed to do lessons at these times and trying to keep that right now, I think letting them get the rest they need might be one of the best things we can do for them. And so making sure that physiological need is the first thing we're talking about. And it's a great place to start. After that, our next basic need is about safety. And that's one that's a real challenge right now for a lot of people. And it's the feeling and the sense of security, the feeling and the sense of physical safety and of psychological safety. And so for a lot of people, those things get challenged because right now we have people who are sick. We might have family members who are sick. We may have concerns about family members who are in high risk categories. We may not be able to get to individuals right now. We may know people who are sick. And so all of that safety need plays into a challenge for a lot of people. And on the psychological side, there's a lot of ambiguity right there right now. People, a lot of schools are closed indefinitely, and we don't have a timeline for when they would reopen, and we don't know what next week will look like or the week after that. And so that kind of ambiguity can be a threat to psychological safety for some individuals as well. And then also security is another big one right now, because thinking about those physiological needs, a lot of the security comes from the knowledge that those pieces are there. And for some people who are facing reductions in hours, furloughs, job losses, that all plays into that need for security. And so these are really basic needs. And so if we're not getting these addressed, or if this is where we need to focus right now, that's okay. And that is totally okay, because that is where we need to begin. And we can't be worrying about higher order pieces right now if we're really trying to address these basic needs. And so it is okay to focus on these pieces and to really dig into that if that's what you need and if that's what the people in your care need. So please don't undermine that need for safety and think, oh my God, we're falling behind in, algebra 2 or US history. Those things can come secondary to some of our basic needs. If you are in the fortunate position where that is not your concern right now, and you're looking at more of these psychological needs and trying to address those, then you would look at these next rungs here. And I think one of the big ones is belonging and love, and that's about relationships and friends and connections. And so just as important as it is to maintain our academic progress and our connections here, we need to also be maintaining friendships and relationship connections. I know I talked to a lot of people the last week or so who have said things like, I'm one of the most introverted people I know, and yet even in spite of that, like I find myself like, because I can't go now, I feel like I need to connect with people. And that's because human beings are social creatures. So even the most introverted among us, myself included, um, we thrive on human connection and on relationships. And so do not, ignore those pieces, and do not ignore the importance of those. And so finding ways to be connected with others, through Zoom or FaceTime or WhatsApp, or, you know, if there's an online game that kids play together or something like that, things like that. But opportunities to connect and maintain those connections can be good. And then in addition to that, also the esteem needs. So feelings of accomplishment, being able to do something, being able to feel productive is a higher order piece that people always want to work on, and to be able to grow. And so looking at, having the opportunity to do things that can make you feel successful, is the next big need. And then finally, the last piece is self-actualization. And that's the higher order needs about self-fulfillment, creative activities and outlets, legacy work and things like that. And that is a great goal over time. But the biggest thing I want to take away from this graph to be is about that progression of needs. And so making sure that we're not trying to undermine our pyramid and start at a higher level because of other concerns, but make sure we have those bottom layers covered and filled in as much as we can first before we spend significant time worrying about the upper layers of our triangle. Okay, so that is a lot of big theory pieces. So what does that practically mean for what we're in now? So a couple of things to think out. Number one is questions. You've probably already gotten and will probably continue to get lots of questions from your kids in these situations, because there are so many unknowns, because we are in a very different situation. And so knowing that you are going to get questions are often an attempt to bring about some of that safety and security that we mentioned in the Maslow's hierarchy, trying to get things figured out and understand what's going on in their universe. And so I will say, as best we can, I would try to work with your students and provide appropriate answers to situations. Now, a couple of things on that. How do we answer those questions effectively? Number one, I try to keep things to the facts. So looking here, our Dragnet reference, very topical, but just the facts, ma'am. And so as much as possible, focusing on the facts of the situation, the information that we have is really important. The other thing I really tell people when it comes to answering questions in any setting is that the three most powerful words, I think, are I don't know. Because it's okay to say that we don't know something. And maybe that's something we can try and find out together. Or maybe it's something I can't answer right now because I don't know, but maybe we won't know that for X amount of time. But sometimes saying that I don't know, and here's what we're doing, or here's what is going on, giving those facts can be helpful. The other big thing I would say in answering questions is really focus on what you have control over and don't overpromise things. Like I've seen some articles out there and some things where people talking about let kids know that they're safe and they're going to be safe. And for some people, that's not a guarantee that we can say those kinds of things. So one thing that we talk about, my wife and I with our daughter, is we tell her, you are safe right now and your mom and dad are here with you, because those are facts and those are true. And that's what is going on right now. So one of those things to keep in mind is making sure we're not going beyond what we can really promise or deliver to kids in those situations, and really sticking to that. The other thing I would say is that when students ask questions, one of my default for kids, especially younger kids, when they ask questions, is if it's not clear what they're digging into, one of my favorite things is, what is it you want to know about X, Y, and Z, whatever they're asking about. So I take this from an example from the birds and the bees, or kinds of conversations, or asking where babies come from. If a 2-year-old asks you where babies come from, one of the best follow-ups I've ever had is, well, what is it you want to know about babies? Because the question that they really have and what answer you are preparing might be completely different. And so trying to get them to tell you what it is they're really trying to learn about, so that you can give an age appropriate and a reasonable answer, can be a way to do that. So kind of reflecting back at them, is it, what did you want to know about the schedule tomorrow, or what did you want to know about viral transmission, or whatever it is, things like that. Like trying to get that information about the question can be really helpful as well. So one of the things I think is really important in a time of ambiguity is that human beings really thrive off of routines. And so having routines is another really powerful strategy when it comes to managing our social and mental health in a time like this. And so as much as we can, building some sense of what's going to happen next, because we may not know what's going to happen, in the next week or two, or what things are going to look like, in a month from now, or, when things will change. But what we can do is kind of build out a schedule for ourselves and have some semblance of routine. I've seen some people who are doing color coded charts and they've got all sorts of things on the walls and they're working with that kind of stuff. I've seen some people that just have calendar outlines, and some of them you can work with kids and just build a verbal schedule. But as much as you can, just try and come up with some sense of, okay, in the morning we will do this and this and this, and then we'll have lunch, and then we'll do this and this and this for the afternoon. Or on this day at 9, we're from 9 to 10 we're doing this, and then we'll take a break and we'll do this, and then we'll have lunch, and so on and so forth. But if, as much as you can, for the things we can control, building a routine and a schedule so that things are working for kids in that capacity is really good. And to have some level of predictability can be powerful. Another thing on the routines, just a little side trick to keep in mind is, as much as it's a bummer, and I get it, it can be really helpful, especially when we're trying to transition into doing things for a day, is getting out of our PJs. Both as adults and as kids. And I know that's not the most interesting sounding thing and or the most fun, but if you're struggling with maintaining a routine or getting into action, trying to stick to somewhat of a typical routine in the regards for, I shower and I brush my teeth and I get dressed for my day, and doing that as much as possible, that may be a way to benefit kids and to benefit us, is to try and address those pieces. And then another big one is right here, and that's the outdoors. So obviously keep in mind the restrictions that are in place for your county or state or whatever governing body has that in place. But I know, like, currently where I'm at, we're under a shelter in place, but reasonable outdoor activity with appropriate social distancing is okay. And so we do go on walks, and we go outside to get some of the sunlight. It's particularly nice where I am right now. It's about 75, 80 outside. So with a little bit of a breeze, it actually feels kind of nice. But getting sunlight and getting outdoors is really powerful and good for our health. And having some, even a little exercise, even if it's just walking around a little bit, taking the dog for a walk. I've seen people taking cats for walks. I'm sure some people are taking like lizards for walks. I don't even know. But making sure to get some sunlight, to get out into the outdoors a little bit, while continuing to practice the expectations of your regulations and being safe. But getting some sunlight is really good for kids. Getting some physical activity in is really good for kids, and it's really good for us as adults as well. So don't forget about getting some outdoors time as well. And then the last big one's going to be kind of screen time. So obviously this is a big conversation point, because we've had people who screen time is a big conversation for the modern parent. And so what are we doing here? One thing that I like to think about, and what I've personally always argued about, is that not all screen time is created equal. So screen time means different things, just in the same way that not all reading time is created equal. That we can read things that are higher quality and provide good outlets for our thinking and our creativity and for our learning, and we can also read complete garbage novels, just in the same way that I can watch incredibly fascinating documentaries and learn rich things about cultures and history. Or I could watch Love is Blind, which I binge watched on Netflix the other day. It's just sometimes you need bad TV. Sorry. And so knowing and appreciating the difference that for kids, there is screen time that is educational, that is functional, that is valuable for kids, and there's screen time that's downtime, where they're just watching something to decompress or take some time out. So the biggest thing I would say here is just have some compassion for yourself and just monitor as best you can what kinds of quality is going on in the screen time as much as possible. I understand there are parents that have multiple kids and you're trying to manage multiple virtual learning environments while trying to learn how to do your job in a work from home setting that you weren't prepared for. And so sometimes, you're going to have to let the movies and the TV shows roll, and that will happen because we're in a unique situation. But if you are worried about that, just trying to think of what are ways I can utilize and use screen time where it is educational and learning based versus entertainment and decompression based, is I think a better way to think about that divide in the screen time. All right, so those are the major things I really wanted to communicate today, just a really quick webinar. One thing I did want to share is that our Special Education Information Center for parents is open and taking calls. Um, so we've routed all our phone numbers at the Region 10 office. And so if parents have questions, they can email, they can chat with us online, or they can call, and we can continue to serve and support them. But other than that, if there are any questions in the chat, I'd be happy to take and dig into those now.
Stephanie, let me see. Unmute you. Are you trying to hit it on your side? I think you got it.
Got it. All right. Thank you. We have one question from our Zoom participants.
Okay.
So the question is, how is telespeech, occupational, and physical therapy applicable to the nonverbal student who has always had homebound school and therapy? Any tips on how to make those teleservices applicable to a nonverbal student?
Okay, that's a great question. And I will say I'm not totally qualified to answer those because of their specialties. And so the first thing I would do is I would try and get in contact and communicate with your the practitioner your child has been working with. So if your child has been receiving speech and OT or PT or any other services previously, talking specifically to the providers that know that child, that have done evaluations and service provision for that child, is going to be step one. So that because every special education service provider I know that I've talked to has been furiously consuming information about teletherapy, teleservices, ethics, logistics, all of those pieces. And so either they or some of their compatriots or some of their supervising bodies or governing bodies have really been digging into this. And so they're going to be the ones that, with their knowledge of the student, of the child, in addition to the information they've been getting about this, they're going to be the best resource for saying, how can PT be effective for my child in the setting that we're in, given the circumstances we're in now, and how can OT be effective and speech be effective? I know of practitioners of all of those who are doing those things with the students that they've worked with. So I know OTs, PTs, and speech therapists who are doing remote work with kids now, but all of them are going to be pretty kid specific. And so the best thing I would say is reach out to those practitioners and ask them how, we can support them in this time to work on some of those pieces. Because for most kids, I believe there is some benefit to doing that, but it's going to be individual student situations. And like I said, every practitioner I know is consuming all sorts of information about how to do this. And so either they or someone else of their, one of their colleagues will be able to help them with, okay, here's what I want to do. How do we do this logistically?
Excellent. Any questions on Facebook? I'm not seeing any.
So I'm trying to get my app to update.
Okay.
Switch around on the thing since it was hard to connect to the API, so I don't want to mess it up.
Right.
Seeing anything, just a lot of thank yous, great information. Thanks for
Okay.
your time, Kia.
Okay, absolutely. And then, like I said, if anyone has any questions, like I said, the SpedTex Information Center is still up and running, and so we've routed our calls and emails to get that information. So yeah, we are here to help.
Thank you.
All
So,
right.
Okay.
And for those that may have want to see the PowerPoint, I didn't have a chance to post it before we got on live, but I will be posting it in the comments under the Facebook Live video. So, and if you're not able to access it through Facebook, if you'll email either Stephanie or myself over at Partners Resource Network, we'll get that file to you.
Okay. I did see someone ask the 855-773-3839 number. I believe it's 1-855-SPEDTEX. I believe they got fancy with that. So yeah, that is the phone number to call SpedTex.
Okay. Excellent. And this was our second in our series of Facebook Lives. Our next one is going to be on Tuesday, March 31st at 1 o'clock. And it is going to be on tips on facilitating choice making and working on communication skills. So okay. Another excellent topic.
Okay. I saw really quickly, guys, sorry, one question came in. So someone asked about ADHD and trying to cope and dealing with meltdowns.
Okay.
That is actually absolutely great. I would say one thing is don't put too much pressure on yourself or a child with ADHD. Trying to, transitions are hard. Working from home and this focus is hard. As someone with ADHD trying to work from home now, I get it. And so please, be patient with yourself, be patient with teens who are trying to transition in this regard. And I would say space is really key. Practicing some strategies when we're calm about what are the breathing techniques we're going to use, or what is the strategies we can use to talk through would be really powerful. And then routines, as much as possible, as much as we can make things routine so that there's less to remember, whether that's writing things down or building out a schedule as much as possible, trying to get that under control. As so you're minimizing the amount of things that have to be remembered and managed can be a big help. The Attitude website is one I like. They're an online magazine for ADHD by parents and others on that. And it's ADD, like Additude, is a great resource. And I know they've posted things specific to working from home and the challenges with COVID-19 right now. All right.
I have the question about, can I post the link in chat? I cannot, because I haven't loaded it to the server yet. That's why I don't have the link yet. So sorry about that. Had internet problems, all sorts of, everything that could go wrong went wrong. But thank you so much once again for joining us. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody that joined us online as well.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. Please be kind to yourselves. Please take care of yourselves and reach out for help and connection if you need it.
All right. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.